Okay, good day everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about the concept of why it is wrong to eat meat. And I'll be sort of going through a couple of ideas. One is obviously the concept of karma and reincarnation, and the underlying principle of love and what is love is, to actually sort of back up what I'm saying, and also just briefly go through what the current belief system is, etc. So just to start off with, so at the moment what we believe is we think it's okay to eat meat, etc. And we sort of follow what the current scientific norm and tradition is, which is it's just a part of nature to consume animals. And okay, so if we look at that concept and belief system, there's quite a bit of a flaw in there. Now, the first thing is the scientists believe that we're designed to eat flesh of animals, etc., meat and fish, etc., and it's perfectly normal. Well, the problem is that they're not looking at it properly. So if we look at our own sort of ancestors, and the organisms that actually animals that are actually closely assigned to us, and we could call them our ancestors, etc., like gorillas, apes, that's sort of a primate background, ape family, you will see that actually it is only the human being that is sort of indulged highly in the consumption of meat. And if we look at our digestive system structure, it's actually more closely aligned to that of a herbivore than that of a carnivore. And they talk about our teeth, etc. Now the thing is, as a human being, we just don't seem to have that sort of a developed teeth like a carnivore, just like a tiger, for instance, to be able to go and just go and kill an animal just like any other carnivore does. But what happens is that over time our intellect sort of developed, and our ability for our sense gratification developed, and because of that we came to realize that we can kill the animal, then cook and eat meat. So we can sort of digest it in that way. And in order to go further, over time we've developed our intellect in such a great capacity that we know now that there are certain parts of the flesh that can actually be tolerated by the human body, and therefore we've sort of now have these new terminologies such as quote unquote lean meat, or etc. So we know that certain parts of the body of the animal is actually bad for the human consumption, and therefore we think that it's all okay. We're all almighty now. We are the sort of the controller of this laws of nature. Whereas now, if you see carefully, is that nature is always superior. It is just the illusion of the human being to think of that. And as soon as there is a great imbalance in the laws of nature, which is basically the laws of God and the laws of dharma, which is the path of non-violence, and when there is a great inequilibrium, I guess, when the balance sort of has changed in nature, there will be problems coming through. And that's why we've sort of, at the moment, we're in great crisis all over the world, regardless of where our technology is, where our material material level is. We're still struggling, and this is one of the reasons, because we do not understand the consequences. Now, looking at an animal, let's compare an animal like a cow, for instance, and a human being. What is the difference? The cow will eat to survive. We eat to survive. As Srila Prabhupada says, the cow eats, we eat to survive. Cow has sex, we have sex. The animal has sex, we have sex. What is the difference? The animal also senses pain, and we sense pain. So what is the real difference? The difference is the intellect, really. Ability to comprehend and etc. That's the main difference. What we do is we sort of have no respect for the animals, because we think we're superior, because we've got all these technology, we've got a developed mindset, brain, but that's not the way it is. And because of what we think we're better, then we think it's okay to consume the meat. Well, unfortunately not. I mean, if you look into the laws of nature, that's what I'm going to be talking about, which is laws of karma and reincarnation. See, what happens is that if we are the same consciousness as they are, and we have the, again, with the problem, with the fortunate thing about human beings is we have the intellect to choose what to eat and what not to eat, and that makes a big difference. And if, because of our intellect, developed intellect, we know that we can still survive on all the vegetarian diet, whereas the non-vegetarian diet, we can still survive on either one, but we choose generally to go the other path, and that sort of leads to karmic bondage also, which I'll discuss that as well. So, if we choose the non-vegetarian diet and indulge in these material senses, what happens is we sort of suffer because of, we suffer, when we die. And why do we suffer? I'm going to be talking about that. Because if there was a law that sort of presided over the universe, which is the laws of dharma and laws of nature, for instance, you'll see that an animal is being killed, which has a consciousness similar to we do, but not as developed. But it's still being killed just for the sake of you consuming to eat meat. So just for your sensory gratifications, the animal is being killed. And if you look at it in that perspective, you'll see that if the animal has to suffer at such a great deal, now why is it okay for you not to suffer as well? Therefore, according to that cycle of, there's this cycle of reincarnation. Indivisible. We don't understand this, that there's this law that's behind all of this. And if you think in logical perspective, it all makes sense, because the laws of karma is just simple as the third law of motion that says that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. That's Newton's third law. And therefore, that if you look at it in that perspective, it just makes a lot very simple, and it just makes it very simple to understand, is that every action we do has an appropriate reaction. And therefore, in this, when religions that believe this, especially, I guess that would be the non-Abrahamic, sort of the dharmic religions, but they already have this belief system of karma and reincarnation, but the practice over time today is still lacking. Many places, many Buddhists, for instance, don't follow that. Many Hindus have forgotten about this, and they've started to indulge in all these sensual things. And again, I'm not stressed about even the Abrahamic religions. Now, there's again this great debate about what is true, what is not, and unfortunately, from what I understand, is that many people in different religions have forgotten the true teachings of the scriptures, and they've sort of made their own interpretations over time. And because of that is the problem. You see, and I'm not saying any religion generally has great things to offer, but the problem is about the individual to understand and contemplate and comprehend what is the truth. And when one goes against the laws of nature, he's actually going against the laws of dharma. And when you go against the laws of dharma, you're going against the laws of God, which we don't realize. And therefore there is this karmic bondage, and therefore there's this thing called hell, where we need to suffer. You see, that is the main reason, is that if you do negative things to other people, then you need to suffer. And then if you indulge in other things like lustful things, etc., all these sensory gratification things, that's also quite common in Abrahamic religions. The different 7 deadly sins, for instance. The idea, that's the underlying idea is there. So so basically, now if you look at it in this perspective, you'll see that, hey, and it makes quite logical sense. Even if you're not really a religious person, it just makes logical sense that, hey, if another being is being killed, and it is similar to what I am, it has similar consciousness, it is able to think, able to feel, and the thing is, if you just indulge in the same, in his suffering, you are bound to suffer just the way it is. Even if you don't believe in God, it still will apply to anybody. If you just open up your mind just to think carefully. Now, the concept of love, I just wanted to go briefly on that as well. See, love is also about sacrifice. People think that love is just about, okay, he's in love with this guy's in love with that woman, and science has made it already clear that these things are just infatuation. There is no such thing as a love between a girlfriend and a boyfriend. Generally, very rare. Love is generally about sacrifice, between a mother and a son, for instance. And the sacrifice, and if you look at it in that perspective, then it makes quite logical sense for you to, if you want to develop your understanding of love, which will get you closer to God, because God is also love, but God is also beyond that. You need to watch my video on what God is and how what Almighty Lord is. But that's a different thing. But idea is that even if you didn't believe in God, you can still believe in the laws of love and nature. And if you follow that, you'll understand that love is about sacrifice. And if you were really appreciated the laws of nature, you would choose the path of non-violence. And this is primarily the teachings of the Buddha as well. You choose the path of non-violence, and that would be abstaining from eating flesh, etc. And unfortunately these days, even great leaders, I'm not going to name anybody, they might be religious great leaders, but they're preaching one thing, but they're practicing completely different. So even they're indulging in all these negative non-vegetarian diet. And the other problem with non-vegetarian diet is also of how it affects your consciousness, your mind. If you're always indulged in meat products and meat and non-vegetarian diet, it has an direct effect to the consciousness, and you will because we are what we eat. That's what we are. Generally, we need to understand that. And if we know that we are what we eat, then any of these negative things, sensual things that sort of aggravate our senses, they could bring us lust, greed, hatred, or anger, etc. These are just fueling our emotions, and because of that, it also is not a good thing. So in all these different perspectives, meat eating is actually a very inappropriate thing to do, yet we still indulge in our modern day society, but we don't understand the implications. So if you make a logical start from now on and make a spiritual start, you will see that there's a great benefit in going to a vegetarian lifestyle, and you will avoid all this negative karmic bondage. And another thing is that you will actually become really happy. Notice I don't know if there are many surveys, but you'll see that a vegetarian person is generally much more happy. And this is the reason, because these in the Sanatana Dharma texts, all these tamasic, which means all these rajasic and tamasic foods, there are certain foods especially that that follow for most of the non-vegetarian diet and other things, is that has a direct relationship with your consciousness. And if you avoid these things, your consciousness is much more purified, and it helps you in everything, in every day of your life, especially in spiritual practice. If we start doing spiritual practice, it'll make it even better. And if you start doing meditation, etc., you will see the big difference. Because if you're doing spiritual practice and the reason you're not getting anywhere is because of your karmic bondage that's happening at the same time, which you don't sort of understand, maybe, or didn't want to look at it, I guess. So I hope we've got some idea to start off with, and I hope you make a sincere start towards the spiritual progress. I'll put some links below as well about spirituality and how to make spiritual progress and get towards God, and in order for all these negative karmic bondages that we are, and how we can become pure self. Thank you.